I volunteered to work on facilitating a panel on global issues. I didn't know anything about global issues. And the people on the panel were all, English wasn't their first language, they were from different nations and coming in. I didn't understand global. I couldn't name one global issue at all, none. Yet I learned real fast, like in a minute, talking to each of them, and enough to facilitate a panel discussion on it. It was really weird. Um, they're in areas like, they're program managers and in State Department. Here I am, a geeky little systems programmer at Department of Justice, so it was different. One of the things I volunteered for was the press. They had a whole dealing with the press and media. Well, that would be the last thing on earth I'd want to do. So, but that little training, it was just so helpful to help me even now. But the world doesn't come to an end when you get in front of a camera.
Yeah.
And and all that stuff. So it helped me stretch myself. And when I stretched myself, I started looking at those gaps and finding opportunities to get more experience in those areas. So since I was very good technically, then I would volunteer to give technical presentations. So I was giving a lot of talks and presentations on my operating system, on the new editor, and on security. I started going that route and got really comfortable in speaking. And then I started, the networking was just a little bit more difficult, still is difficult, to try to find ways to do that. That's actually how I got into social media now, to try to find ways. I'm comfortable in the technology, uncomfortable in the sharing of myself. And so how do you find ways to share yourself in a very safe way? So I started practicing that and doing it so where it got more comfortable and not forced.
And I think that's really fascinating. You're on this track and you love what you're doing. I mean, you're a mathematician, you love doing this, but you looked up and said, I want more, I want to be an executive. But you recognize the gap. I think that's self-realization. I think that's really key. And number two is, it's hard to walk into a room of people, but there are resources to go learn and go practice. And you did that. You said, I'm going to take that on. I'm going to learn how to do it. I'm going to take on stuff I don't even know what I'm doing. And it's okay to make a mistake and embarrass yourself. You can't recover from that, especially if they don't know you. So now it's, I guess, a little bit harder. So this worked. This was a strategy that really worked for you. So who recognized this, or how did you get pulled up then to go into this executive level?
I worked with my second husband. I met him at that job at Department of Justice. And so we ended up having the same boss. So must have been tough on my boss, but it was pretty good, actually. I really enjoyed work. People always say, oh, God, you work with your husband. I really, really enjoyed work. I'm going off the tangent a bit, but I enjoyed working with him. And he retired. He's 19 years older than me, so he retired. And when his retirement, everybody, cried. They would miss him because they worked for him for so long. And I'm crying. I'm like, oh. And then on the way home together in the car, I'm like, why am I crying? I get to go home with him. But his boss, his name is Jim. Jim would end up, and I didn't even realize that he was doing this. He was moving me around. And just when I got comfortable, I'd get moved. So I did this little zigzag thing, so I was getting lateral reassignments in different places. And I'd go in, I was his problem solver. As he said, you're my little problem solver.
Oh, interesting.
And so if he had a problem here or something he worried about, he put me there, and I developed kind of a quick formula. It was a formula, wasn't it? I just got that. So for how to turn around an organization, a team, you kind of do a diagnosis. What are the barriers in place? Make sure they got everything they need. Is it training? Is it time? Is it support? What is it? Give it to them, give them time to do it, and then they do it, then go on to the next. So I was kind of fixing things and going like that. And I could tell because this Jim would walk down the hall, and he would look at me. And I said, oh, God. If he looked at me, I knew that I was getting ready to get moved. So he was looking at me. I saw him in the corner of my eye, and I decided I wasn't going to look back. And then one day he told my husband, he said, tell your wife she can't avoid me forever. So I said, okay. So I just went to his office. What is it this time? So then I had one of the biggest challenges of my life, and a job that was almost as bad as cleaning out test tubes. But it probably was a turning point in my career for things. So he helped me see that, and getting even in a bad job, something that wasn't really good, and I wasn't happy. It ended up being one of the best jobs I ever had. After that, my husband retired, and I was able to move that last up, which was deputy director of the data center. That was Jim's deputy, and that was the final job I had before I went into the senior executive ranks, and I went in Department of Energy, which was really, I almost hate to say this, but it was really a horrible job. It was awful. My first
So you kind of risen to the top of what you could do at this level, and then you're at the bottom of the next level.
Correct, and I was crying. Might have gained 60 pounds. I don't know, something really bad. It was very stressful. Every single day was stressful, and I was trying to. So this formula that I had, it just wasn't working. And it was like so. This is so geeky, but and I took a physics class, and in physics, this particular class required calculus. And if you didn't use calculus, had to use just algebra, but you needed calculus. So I think when I went to Department of Energy, I was still using algebra techniques for management and leadership, where I really needed calculus.
You know, I always think that when I tell people about how do I get to be a leader, no calculus and algebra.
So I learned, and it was very difficult to learn that. But as bad as that experience was, I would say it was one of the best things that ever happened in my life. In terms of, I was there 16 months, and I was so glad to leave. But as I look back on it, it was one of the best career experiences that I had.
Why do you say that?
I learned a whole lot. I learned resilience. I didn't know about that, really. I made a little comment about I didn't study, and I really didn't study because it was easy. Things came easy. So this wasn't easy. If you're a good student and things come easy, sometimes you fall short when you have to study because you don't really know how to study. And because all these problem-solving techniques, it came easy. It was easy because I knew everybody. I either knew them or my husband knew them. And so and all these little party tricks just didn't work the same way in another organization. So I learned really fast how to modify my formula and get some semblance of success there. And I would say that what I did there in a short period of time lasted. I mean, that was over 10 years ago, and it really lasted. It didn't change. It wasn't a waste. I don't want to call it a legacy, but the things that I changed and implemented are still there.
You know, I think it's really interesting when you talk about that you're in this really difficult role in this new place and you're uncomfortable, but you really embraced the learning process and discovered and looked back through retrospect and said, you know, I discovered something about myself, and that resilience is going to be a key. And I know we're running out of time, so I want to get to NASA because I know a lot of people want to do that. I want to get a few minutes for everybody to ask questions because talking with you is so fascinating. We have such great conversations. NASA. So last night a meteor went by. 200,000. Yeah, you saw it?
Mm-hmm.
How'd you see it?
Well, I saw a shooting star.
Okay.
I don't know if it was that meteor.
Right. Does NASA get involved with stuff like that? I mean, do you guys send out alerts? So.
Alerts. So. Let's see. Okay, that sounds like email.
Yeah.
Yes.
Close your doors tonight. Meteor's coming by. We talked about the fact that, you know, NASA, and you work for Goddard, but at NASA, we've just ended the shuttle program. And one thing I asked you, so is NASA going away? What's NASA about? I think that's really an important message.
So one of the reasons, other than the fact that it was an N and right in the middle of the room at that college fair, career fair day, but NASA was a place I always wanted to be an astronaut. You know, I dreamed of the stars and going to be an astronaut. I wanted to be an astronaut, but I didn't know fat, black, nearsighted women astronauts, right? So I said, maybe I can't. Maybe I'll just be a mathematician and you know, keep my head down. And I liked, you know, my favorite show was I Dream of Jeannie then. So I didn't want to be Jeannie. I wanted to be like Major Nelson. I wanted to be that. But really girls are supposed to be like Jeannie, but I want to be Major Nelson. So, but the thing is that NASA has, its mission and its purpose, it strikes everybody's heart, the heart of somebody that wants to look at the stars, and it's ubiquitous. It's not. It has that desire to look up in the sky. It's existed in ancient times, and it still is today. Man's fascination with flying, and with the stars, and with the heavenly bodies, and NASA's mission kind of propels that. It speaks to the heart of what's in people's hearts with that. And it helps us through observing the Earth, through observing the universe, the solar system, understanding our planet. It helps us with those basic questions that we all have as humans. Where did we come from? Where are we going? And are we alone? Are we alone? And we look up in the sky and we say, are we alone? And then we see something like a shooting star or a meteor goes by, and you know that there's something else out there. There's something better. There's something. So this sense of something bigger than you are, something more vast. It speaks to the heart of everybody, and NASA kind of resonates with that. NASA helps people remember that, and a lot of people are thinking, "Oh, well, gee, if you're not flying shuttles anymore, what are you doing?" So all the things that I just spoke about to NASA, the things that made me as a little girl want to be an astronaut, and as many other little girls now who can actually be astronauts. Flying the shuttle doesn't stop any of that. We're still studying the space, studying the solar system. We're still making discoveries from the flying orbiting observatory now, the Hubble Space Telescope, the International Space Station, which has people living in space for long periods of time. All those things we're still doing. We're collecting petabytes of data each day and analyzing and making new discoveries. And yet it didn't stop when the shuttle stopped flying. But the symbol of a thing flying up in space with a NASA meatball on it symbolizes everything, yet it really isn't everything. Now we're looking at how to get beyond low Earth orbit. What are the technologies that will enable that? How do we encourage the next generation of explorers to be like me, to want to be like Major Nelson, and to be the first people to walk on Mars? Those people are in elementary school now. They're in a kindergarten. And how to capture the hearts and minds of those people, like I did as a youth, to want to be the one that is the first to walk on Mars. And all those don't rely on having a shuttle. It relies on people like me, like all those, to want to study math or engineering or science and want to be the one to find out that question, are we alone? And is there something out there bigger than us? And NASA stands for that, and that doesn't change because there's no flying thing with a meatball on it. But that's coming. It's coming. We'll get another vehicle.
And it'll be with more advanced technology.
Right.
So it was really interesting. We talked about it. That vehicle really had the life it was supposed to have. It wasn't a surprise that it came to its end.
Right.
It went to the end it was built to go to.
Right.
So it wasn't that we failed. It was the fact, and I think a lot of Americans think that we did it wrong. We can't keep it going. Why don't we change the battery, or give it a lube job and we'll send it back up?
It's a 30-year-old car.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you really don't want to keep a 30-year-old car on the road.
It's not the safest thing to do, and you've got the lives of astronauts that you've got to think about.